July 1st, 2008 became one of the darkest days in Mongolia's democratic history. What began as a protest over disputed parliamentary elections results quickly escalated into violence anything the country had experienced since its democratic revolution in 1990s. By the end of the day, five civilians lost their lives, hundreds were injured, and Mongolia entered its first ever state of emergency.
Imagine waking up, believing that your work no longer mattered. Imagine thousands of people gathering in the center of the city, demanding for justice.
That was the reality of many Mongolians in the summer of 2008. In this video, we will show you what happened on July 1st, why it happened, and what lessons can be still learned today.
On June 29, 2008, Mongolia held parliamentary elections. The ruling Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party, commonly known as the MPRP, announced that it had won enough seats to remain in power. However, many supporters of the Democratic Party believed that the election had been manipulated. Allegations of vote buying and unfair counting spread rapidly through news reports and conversations. Although official investigations didn't overturn the election results, public confidence had already been damaged. As frustration grew, thousands of citizens decided to gather peacefully in Squatter Square to demand transparency and accountability.
The final tally from Sunday's election in Mongolia isn't even out yet, but anger has erupted on the streets of the capital, Ulaanbaatar. Supporters of the opposition party have stormed the headquarters of the ruling party that's expected to win.
You're still watching the election?
They announced the final results.
So who won?
The MPRP.
But people were saying something was wrong.
They're saying there may have been fraud.
They're all going.
Do you think it will stay peaceful?
I hope so. During the afternoon of July 1st, thousands of demonstrators gathered in Ulaanbaatar. At first, many participants protested peacefully, demanding a recount of the election and greater transparency from the government. As the crowd grew larger, tensions increased. Some protesters became violent. The headquarters of the ruling MPRP was attacked. Windows were smashed, the buildings were looted, fires were started. Police officers attempted to disperse the crowd using tear gas and rubber bullets. As the violence intensified, the situation became increasingly difficult to control. Later that evening, live ammunition was used by the police. 5 citizens were killed, more than 300 people were injured. Hundreds were arrested. The violence shocked the nation.
That night, President Nimbai Rinpoche declared Mongolia's first state of emergency since the country's democratic transition. A curfew was imposed across Ulaanbaatar. Television broadcasts were temporarily restricted. Security forces were deployed throughout the capital. For 4 days, daily life in the city changed dramatically as the government worked to restore order.
I understand why people protested.
So do I.
If people think elections aren't fair, shouldn't they speak out?
Yeah, but once buildings started burning, everything changed.
And then people died. The events of July 1st raised difficult political questions that remain relevant today. Citizens have the right to protest peacefully and to question fairness of elections. At the same time, governments have a responsibility to maintain public safety. When protests become violent, leaders are faced with difficult situations and how much force they should be used. The challenge for every democracy is finding a balance between protesting public order and preserving civil liberties. July 1st reminds us when trust between citizens and governments break down, the consequences can be devastating.
The July 1st conflict left deep political and emotional scars on Mongolia. Investigations followed, debates continued, and reforms to the country's electoral system were introduced in the years afterward. Although opinions about the events still differ, one lesson remains clear. Democracy depends not only on free elections but also on public trust, transparency, accountability, and peaceful participation. Nearly 20 years later, July 1st continues to remind Mongolians that protecting democracy requires responsibility from both citizens and governments.